You shouldn't be here.
I know. I know. I wanna be with you.
Steam. That was the first thing. Steam thick enough to lean on, rolling off the shower tiles of the Burr Gymnasium locker room, and through it, a voice with Atlanta poured all the way through it. You gonna stare at that playbook all night, Thorne, or you gonna look at me when I'm talking to you? Marcus Thorne, 18 years old, looked up. Devon Price stood at the next locker with a towel around his waist and water still mapping the broad architecture of his shoulders, grinning like he already knew something Marcus hadn't admitted to himself yet. The locker room smelled of eucalyptus liniment and athletic tape, and underneath it, faint, the dryer sheet warmth that followed Devon everywhere like weather. "I'm looking," Marcus said. And he was. That was the problem. Devon's grin widened by 1 degree. 1. Marcus measured it the way he measured everything: load, span, tolerance. "Coach says you got the softest hands on the roster." Devon pulled his shirt down slow like punctuation. "I keep wondering what else they're good at. You draw, right?" The whistle from the corridor split the steam in half. Devon laughed, low, and walked toward the sound, and Marcus sat there with his pulse doing something unarchitectural. 3 weeks. He'd been at Howard 3 weeks, and already the structure of him was failing inspection. 3 weeks earlier, the Greyhound out of Baltimore smelled of diesel and someone's cold fried chicken, and Marcus rode the whole hour with his father's trumpet case upright between his knees like a passenger. He hadn't opened it since the funeral. He carried it anyway. Some loads you don't put down just because they're heavy. Some loads are the only proof the building ever stood. In the duffel at his feet, 2 letters. The first was embossed: full athletic scholarship, Howard University football. The words so heavy on the page they nearly tore through it. Wide receiver, fast hands, faster feet, a body that did what bodies from his block were expected to do. The second letter he had printed himself at the Enoch Pratt Free Library and folded so many times the creases had gone soft as cloth. His acceptance into the architecture program. Provisional, conditional. His, if he could carry both. His mother had pressed her palm flat against his chest at the station, right over the heartbeat. "Your daddy blew everything he had into that horn and kept the silence for us," she said. "Don't you do that. Don't you keep the silence." The bus crossed into the district as the sun came up over the row houses, and Marcus watched the city assemble itself out of the dark, cornice by cornice, line by line, and felt, for the first time since the funeral, something in his chest that wasn't grief. It was scaffolding. August in Washington, D.C. doesn't arrive. It occupies. The heat stood on the yard like a body, and the yard didn't care. Marcus came up the walk with the duffel on one shoulder and the trumpet case in the opposite hand, and Howard University happened to him all at once. Drum lines practicing somewhere out of sight. A girl laughing so freely it sounded like a dare. Upperclassmen in fraternity jackets despite the heat, moving like they owned the deeds to the ground. Frederick Douglass Memorial Hall held its colonnade against the white sky, and Marcus stopped walking. He counted the columns. He couldn't help it. He found the rhythm in them, the intervals, the discipline, the way the building said permanence without raising its voice. Around him, hundreds of black students crossed in every direction, every one of them somebody's miracle, and for one disorienting second, Marcus felt the thing he would spend 17 years learning to wall off. Belonging, arriving uninvited, asking to be let in. He shifted the trumpet case in his grip and kept walking. Structure first, feeling later. That was the order of operations his life had taught him. Drew Hall, 4th floor, room 4B, and the door was already open. The smell reached him before the introduction did. Hot oil, cornmeal, something fried in violation of at least 4 university housing codes. A broad-shouldered figure crouched over a contraband hot plate balanced on a milk crate, turning catfish with surgical focus and bare feet. "You, Thorne?" The young man didn't look up. "Wide receiver Thorne with the 4.340. "My condolences. I'm the linebacker they assigned to keep you alive. Devon Price, Atlanta." He flipped the fish. "You hungry?" "I ate on the bus." "That's not what I asked." Devon looked up then. Bright, expressive eyes, a grin that arrived like a porch light coming on. He took in the pressed black turtleneck, the trousers with the deliberate crease, the trumpet case. Man dressed like a chess piece, carrying a horn, telling me he's not hungry. "I'd sit down anyway." Marcus sat. The catfish was, objectively, measurably, the best thing he had eaten since before the funeral. He didn't say so. Devon watched him not say so and handed him a second piece without comment. And that, the without comment, was the subverse brick of something Marcus had no blueprint for. 5:45 in the morning, and Green Stadium was still holding yesterday's heat in its turf like a grudge. Two-a-days broke bodies down to their load-bearing truths. Marcus learned the roster by collision. Who hit high? Who hit scared? Who hit like they had something at home they were running from? He ran routes until the numbers painted on the field smeared in his vision, and his hands, the soft hands, coach's favorite phrase, kept finding the ball the way they found a pencil line. Exactly, and without permission, from his thinking mind. It was Devon who hit him hardest in the 3rd hour, a clean legal shoulder that put Marcus flat against the earth with the sky ringing above him. A hand arrived in his field of vision, broad, steady, open. "Get up, chess piece." Devon hauled him to his feet and held the grip half a second past necessary, reading him. "You hit the ground wrong. You fall like you're protecting something." "My hands," Marcus said. "Nah." Devon tapped Marcus once on the chest plate, right over the heart, and jogged back to the line. "That ain't where your hands are." He found the drafting room on a Thursday, between the weight room and a film session, following a hand-lettered sign down a corridor of the School of Architecture like a man following a smell of water. 20 drafting tables in afternoon light. T-squares hung in rows. The room was empty, and it was the loudest silence Marcus had ever stood in. The silence of a place where things got made. He should have left. He had 40 minutes and a quad to cross. Instead, he set down his helmet bag, took the pencil from behind his ear, and began to draw the stadium, not as it was, but as it could be. The bleacher load redistributed, the sight lines corrected. A cantilevered shade structure for the east stands where the elders sat sun-punished every home game. When he surfaced, an hour had died without his consent. Practice film had started without him, and the drawing on the vellum was the truest sentence he had spoken since Baltimore. Behind him, unnoticed, a man in a charcoal 3-piece suit stood in the doorway, utterly still, watching the way a collector watches an auction lot he has already decided to own. Architecture. 101 met in a lecture hall that smelled of chalk dust and ambition, and Dr. Alistair Vaughn did not enter it so much as annex it. A tall, imposing man in his late 40s, polished walnut-toned skin, silver threading through close-cropped hair, the charcoal three-piece fitting like a second skeleton. He set one fountain pen on the lectern, parallel to its edge, and looked out at 90 freshmen as if conducting a structural survey of each one. Every building is an argument, Vaughn said. No notes, no greeting. It argues against gravity, against weather, against time, against the poverty of imagination of the people who commissioned it. Most of you will lose that argument, politely, your whole careers. He let the silence carry the load. I am only interested in the ones who intend to win it. His eyes moved across the hall and stopped. Marcus felt it physically, like a plumb line dropped through the crown of his head, on the freshman in the back row with a playbook under his drawing pad. Mr. Thorne, Vaughn said, reading the roster without looking down. Football, I'm told. Tell me, what is the span of a man's reach? The hall turned. Marcus held the gaze. Whatever the foundation can carry, he said. Something flickered in Vaughn's calculating dark eyes. Appetite filed as approval. Sit closer next week, Vaughn said, and resumed the lecture, and Marcus sat in the held breath quiet of having been chosen and not yet knowing the price of it. After class, the hall draining, Vaughn stood at the lectern capping the fountain pen with both hands, a small ceremony. The stadium drawing, he said, not looking up. The cantilevered shade structure. You left it in the drafting room. Marcus stopped mid-aisle. I didn't sign it. You didn't have to. Athletes draw fantasies of stadiums. Architects draw corrections of them. Yours was a correction. Vaughn looked up then, and the full weight of his attention was a climate. Howard has produced the finest black architects in this country's history, Mr. Thorne, and this institution still makes most of them choose between survival and vision. I do not intend to watch it make you choose between a football and a future. The football is the future. It's paying for the rest. For now. Vaughn slid the rolled vellum across the lectern. He had brought it, had carried Marcus's drawing here, a fact that landed somewhere between flattery and trespass. My door is open Thursdays. Most students knock for years and never see the inside of it. He left. The room kept the scent of him, black pepper, patchouli, old money, the cologne of a man who had never once been questioned in a room he chose to enter. The bruise had risen along Marcus's ribs in the shape of someone's helmet, and Devon found it in the locker room the way he found everything, without asking. Lift your arm. It wasn't a request. Devon turned him by the shoulder with two fingers, frowning at the bruise like it had personally disrespected him, and reached for the roll of tape. Trainer can do it, Marcus said. Trainer's got 40 bodies. I got one. The tape went on in smooth, overlapping passes. Devon's hands unhurried, his breath close enough to count. The locker room had mostly emptied. Somebody's shower ran. The fluorescent light hummed one half-step flat. Marcus stood very still, the way he stood when feeling something had become unavoidable. Devon's palm flattened once against the finished tape, against his ribs, against the architecture of him, and stayed a second longer than medicine required. There, Devon said, quieter than before. Protected. Their eyes met in the narrow mirror bolted inside Marcus's locker door, and neither of them filed the moment unto teammates, and both of them let the whistle from the hallway pretend to end it. Midnight, in room 4. B, the hot plate ticking as it cooled, and Devon talked the way other people breathed. About Atlanta, about his grandmother's kitchen where being fed and being loved were the same transaction. About wanting medicine, pre-med on a football body, a man planning to spend his life putting people back together. Your pops play? Devon nodded at the trumpet case standing in the corner like a guest who never sat down. He played. Marcus turned a page of the playbook he wasn't reading. Jazz, Baltimore clubs. He was... The sentence reached the gap where his father's life had been and stopped at the unbuilt edge of it. He kept the silence for us. That's what my mother says. Devon didn't fill the pause. That was the thing about him Marcus was learning. He treated silence like a room you could share instead of a wall you had to scale. One day, Devon said finally to the ceiling, easy as Sunday, "You gon' tell me the whole blueprint of you, Thorne. I'm patient. I'm from Atlanta. We marinate." Marcus, in the dark, did something his face had nearly forgotten the engineering for. He smiled. Thursday. The door was heavy, oiled walnut, and it opened before Marcus finished knocking. Vaughn's office was a thesis statement, floor-to-ceiling shelves with first edition standing at attention, a drafting table by the window tilted to catch the north light, framed photographs, Vaughn with mayors, Vaughn with deans, Vaughn breaking ground in a hard hat that had never met dirt. The air was black pepper and patchouli with an underline of leather, and the afternoon light came through the blinds in disciplined parallel lines, laying bars of gold across the floor. "Sit," Vaughn said and poured 2 glasses of sparkling water as if it were a ritual older than both of them. "Tell me what you saw on the yard your first day." Marcus told him, the columns, the intervals, permanence without a raised voice. Vaughn listened with his fingers steepled, and when Marcus finished, he nodded once, slow, like a verdict. 17 years I have taught here," he said. "I see one of you a decade. The ones who don't look at buildings. The ones who read them." He slid a key across the desk. Brass. Unremarkable. Irreversible. "The drafting room. After hours. Locks at 9. You'll have until midnight. Tell no one, because I have told no one." A secret Marcus would understand much later is a load-bearing wall. Whoever installs it owns the structure. He took the key. The collision came on a Tuesday, the way collisions do. Scheduled by no one, felt by everyone. Film session ran long. Coach Greer stood at the whiteboard diagramming a defense, and Marcus, on the back row, was diagramming a load path on the inside cover of his playbook. And Greer, who saw everything, that was his entire job, seeing, stopped talking. "Thorne, you drawing in my film room?" The room went still as poured concrete. "Yes, sir." A long pause. Greer was a fair man, which made him more dangerous than a cruel one. "Your scholarship says football, son. Says it in writing. I've seen them try to ride 2 horses before. The horses don't mind, but the man gets torn in half." He turned back to the whiteboard. "Burr Gym, 6 a.m. You can think about your priorities at altitude. Stadium stairs at dawn, alone, lungs burning, the city laid out below in its grids and its monuments and its unfinished arguments. And Marcus, climbing, hating how clearly he could see it. Every beautiful line of a skyline built by men who had been allowed to choose only oneself. Devon found out about the 6 a.m. stairs because Devon found out about everything, and at 5:40 he was waiting in the parking lot in his cousin's borrowed Buick with 2 foam cups of gas station coffee on the dash. Get in. You can suffer with caffeine like a grown man. They drove the long way, down Georgia Avenue with the windows open, the city still wearing its night clothes. Devon talked about nothing. A song on the radio, a linebacker at Hampton with a vendetta, and Marcus realized somewhere around the reservoir that Devon had engineered the entire morning so that Marcus would not climb those stairs feeling punished. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus asked. He meant it as a survey. It came out as a confession. Devon kept his eyes on the road, easy, both wrists draped on the wheel. "Because you're the only man I ever met," he said, "who acts like being cared about is a structural risk." A beat, the Atlanta grin. Softer at this hour. "I like risk. I play linebacker." The midnight drafting room became a country with a population of 1, and then, increasingly, 2. Vaughn began appearing, Tuesdays mostly. He would materialize among the drafting tables at 10, jacket off, sleeves never rolled. A man who removed formality the way other men put it on, and stand over Marcus's shoulder while the radiators ticked. "Your line is afraid here." The fountain pen hovered over the vellum, never touching. "You drew this corner the way your scholarship wants it. Draw it the way you want it." He was brilliant. That was the trap's first tooth. He was right. Under Vaughn's attention, Marcus's drafting matured by years inside of weeks, and the attention itself began to feel structural, weight-bearing, necessary. "You don't belong on a field, Mr. Thorne," Vaughn said one midnight quietly, standing close enough that the black pepper and old money replaced the room's own air. "A field is where this country prefers to look at you. A skyline is where it will be forced to." The sentence was a master sentence. 1 part truth, 1 part flattery, all parts isolation. Marcus heard only the truth in it. He was 18. The truth was the bait. First home game. Green Stadium under lights, and the night came up off the field in waves of noise and barbecue smoke and brass. The Showtime band made the air itself percussive. Marcus stood in the tunnel with his heart going like a pile driver, and Devon's helmet leaned in against his, face mask to face mask, close enough that the rest of the stadium went out of focus. "Hey, chess piece." Devon's eyes through the cage, bright, lit, alive. "Tonight, you ain't got to be but one thing. Fly." Third quarter, broken play, the ball arriving high and wrong, and Marcus left the ground. And for 2 airborne seconds, there was no scholarship, no grief, no trumpet case, no key in his sock drawer, nothing but span. And the soft hands did what they were built for. Touchdown, Howard. The stadium detonated. Devon reached him first, took Marcus's helmet in both hands, pressed their face masks together, screaming joy with his whole Atlanta chest. And Marcus, helmet held like that, hands gripping Devon's jersey at the ribs, laughed. Actually laughed. Under the lights in front of 11,000 witnesses, none of whom knew they were watching the most honest moment of his year. The locker room after a win is a carnival. By midnight, it's a chapel. Marcus stayed late retaping his wrist and replaying the catch, and Devon stayed late because Marcus stayed late. Steam again. The hum of the one flat fluorescent light. Devon sat down on the bench close, the kind of close that has a question in it, towel around his neck. Victory still coming off him like heat off the turf. That catch. Devon shook his head slow. "Man, you hung up there like you didn't owe gravity nothing." "Everything obeys load," Marcus said. "Even me." "Yeah?" Devon's voice dropped out of the carnival register and into something bare. He reached over and took Marcus's half-taped wrist in both hands, finished the wrap himself, slow, exact, his thumb crossing the pulse point once. Once, like a man checking a foundation for a heartbeat. The room shrank to the span of the bench. What's it telling you to do right now? The pulse under Devon's thumb answered for him, traitorously, at pace. Footsteps, an equipment manager's keys. The two of them moved apart along seams that had not existed 10 seconds earlier, and Devon laughed at nothing, and Marcus studied the floor like a site survey. And the moment folded itself away unfinished. Load applied. Load not yet born. The call came that Sunday, his mother's voice flat with the effort of flatness. They were selling the house. His father's debts had outlived him. The row house on Carey Street, the stoop, the kitchen where the horn used to sound through the floorboards. Sold to cover a silence. Marcus took the news standing, said the right things, hung up and sat down on the floor of room 4B between the beds with his back against the frame, in the dark, in the rain ticking against the window, holding the trumpet case across his knees like a body. He didn't hear Devon come in. He heard the floor take Devon's weight beside him. No questions. That was the mercy of it. No questions, no fixing, no Atlanta charm. Devon sat down on the floor of the dark and put his arms around Marcus Thorne, around the trumpet case and all, and held on. Marcus went rigid, every joint load-tested, every wall manned, and Devon simply stayed, smelling of dryer sheets and rain, one hand flat against Marcus's back like a hand on set concrete, checking the cure. And the structure failed, quietly, the way the strongest ones do. Not a collapse, a settling. Marcus's forehead came down to Devon's shoulder and his breath broke in half, and for the length of one rainstorm, somebody held the weight, and it was not him. No one had ever held him without asking what they'd get in return. He was 18 years old, and he had not known until 2 a.m. on a Sunday that he was starving. Morning made strangers of them gently. Devon was at the hot plate when Marcus woke, making eggs with his back turned, narrating yesterday's game like nothing had been demolished and rebuilt overnight. Marcus dressed with the exactness of a man reinstalling himself. Neither named the thing. The thing sat at breakfast with them anyway, drinking from its own cup. "You good?" Devon asked finally, plate to plate, eyes direct. "I'm structural," Marcus said. Devon studied him and let it hold. "Aight," he said soft. "But for the record, Thorne, that thing last night," he turned back to the eggs, "that wasn't weakness. That was load transfer. Even I know that much architecture." Marcus left for class with his walls repointed and one brick somewhere low in the foundation deliberately left loose, and didn't notice that he was, for the first time in his life, walking around with an unlocked door in him. He would notice. Someone else noticed first. Vaughn noticed the way barometers notice. That Thursday, the office lights seemed warmer, the parallel bars of sun lying like rulers across the rug, and on the desk, wrapped in plain butcher paper with drafting tape corners, a package with no occasion attached. "Open it." A monograph. Mies van der Rohe, first edition, the cloth cover worn soft as the creases of a letter folded too many times. Inside the flyleaf, an inscription in fountain ink, the hand impeccable. For MT, who already understands that less is only more when one has first owned everything. AV. "I can't take this." "You can't refuse it. There's a difference, and the difference is manners." Vaughn came around the desk and set the book back into Marcus's hands, his own hands closing briefly over them, dry, deliberate, ringless. Pressure applied and released like a test of materials. Great men are not discovered, Mr. Thorne. They are built by other great men, brick by brick, privately. Walking back across campus, the book heavy in his bag as a cornerstone, Marcus felt the two warmths confuse themselves in him. The one from room 4B that asked for nothing, and this one, which had begun, invisibly, to invoice. The offer came framed as inevitability. The Obsidian Fellowship, Vaughn said, midnight drafting room, the city dark beyond the windows. My private atelier, one student, summer in my firm's DC office, my name on your recommendations, my rooms at the AIA Gala. The last 4 fellows are now licensed in 7 states. He paused at the exact load center of the sentence. It would, of course, be impossible alongside football. There it was. The choice, installed by a master craftsman so that it looked like a doorway and functioned as a wall. The scholarship pays for everything, Marcus said. Without it, I'm back on the bus. Money is a solvable problem for a man with the right patron. Vaughn's voice did not change registers for this sentence, which is what made it dangerous. Poverty of patronage is the only poverty that has ever held our people's genius down. Let me solve the solvable problem, Marcus. His first name. 61 days of Mr. Thorne, and now, at midnight, in an empty building, his first name, deployed like a key turning. Think, Vaughn said, gathering his coat. But not slowly. Greatness has a schedule. Devon heard fellowship and put his fork down, which for Devon was a seismic event. Run that back. He gave you a key, a first edition, and a money promise. And the one condition is the thing that comes with 40 teammates and a coach who counts your heartbeats. Devon leaned back against the dorm window, arms crossed over the Howard Bison hoodie, bright eyes gone unusually still. Marcus, I'm pre-med, not pre-law, but I know anatomy. That man looks at you like a building he wants to buy. He looks at me like I'm talented. Both things can be true. That's what makes it work. Devon's voice stayed level, which was its own alarm. My grandmother had a name for men like that. Said some folks don't rob you, they renovate you. Move the walls around till the house don't know itself, and call it improvement. He looked at the trumpet case in the corner, then back. You finally got a door open in you, man. I watched it happen. I'd hate for the first thing through it to be him. You don't know him. No, Devon said quietly. But I know you. And you're worth more than what he's paying. The argument did what arguments do in load-bearing friendships. It didn't collapse anything. It introduced a crack too fine to see and too deep to caulk. Marcus stopped narrating his Thursdays. Devon stopped asking, which was worse. They still ran routes in tandem, still ate at the same hot plate, still moved around room 4B in their settled choreography. But the silence between them changed material, from the shared kind to the soundproof kind, and both of them, trained in impact, pretended not to feel the building shift. In the language Marcus thought in, he understood it precisely. Devon had applied an honest load, and Marcus had responded like every structure his childhood ever taught him. He had transferred the weight to the colder wall. At night, he lay awake between the two warmths. One asked for nothing, and was therefore terrifying. Care without a contract was a span Marcus had no tables for. The other asked for everything, and was therefore legible. He'd been raised on rooms where love was conditional. Vaughn's arithmetic felt like home. That was the deepest tooth of the trap, and not one soul in the world had taught Marcus Thorne to see it. November now. The drafting room at dusk, radiators ticking, the sky over the city going the color of a healing bruise. Marcus worked alone on the fellowship portfolio he had not yet admitted he was assembling. A community recreation center for Carey Street, the row house block they'd sold out from under his mother, redrawn as something no bank could foreclose. Roof spans like open hands, light wells, a music room, south-facing, sized exactly for a man and a trumpet, though he told himself the dimensions were a coincidence. It was the best thing he had ever drawn, and he had drawn it for the dead and the displaced. And he was 18 and exhausted and lit from inside by the work. The most defenseless condition a builder can be found in. He didn't hear the door. He had given up hearing the door. The door belonged to Vaughn now, like the room, like the hours, like he would understand later, much later, in a hospital of a different kind, like the boy at the drafting table. You drew a music room, Vaughn's voice said behind him, close, for a building with no music program. It's for... Marcus stopped. It's load balancing. The south wall needed program. No. The word was almost tender. It's for your father. It's the finest lie in the whole drawing. Never explain it to a client. Vaughn shed his jacket onto the stool, formality removed, the second skeleton set aside, and bent over the drawing beside him, and for an hour he was nothing but brilliant. This is the part the cautionary tales leave out, the part Marcus would never be able to explain to anyone who wasn't in the room. It was the best hour of teaching he would receive in 5 years of architectural education. Vaughn rebuilt his roof spans with him, corrected his light wells, found the structural flaw in the west elevation, and handed Marcus the discovery of it, generous as a father, patient as a patron, the fountain pen hovering, never touching, his voice low and certain in the ticking radiator dark. There, Vaughn said at last. The drawing between them was finished, and it was glorious, and they had built it together, and that, together, was the trap's final tooth, machined to fit exactly the hole in a fatherless boy. The room had gone full dark beyond the drafting lamp, one pool of light, 2 men inside it. You see what we are when no one interrupts, Vaughn said quietly. He was not looking at the drawing. Marcus, 18, lit from inside, defenseless, said, yes. He meant the work. He would spend years rehearsing that he had meant the work. Vaughn moved with the economy of a man who never reached for anything that hadn't already been arranged to be in reach. A hand, dry and deliberate, came to rest at the back of Marcus's neck. The architect's grip, the way you steady a level, and the scent of black pepper and patchouli and old money closed over the drafting lamp's pool of light, and Dr. Alistair Vaughn kissed him. For 1 second, and the count of it would torment Marcus for 17 years. Was it 1 second? Was it 2? What is the load rating of a second? For 1 second, Marcus stood inside the kiss the way you stand inside a building in an earthquake. Total stillness, structural awe, every alarm in the architecture ringing at frequencies he had not yet learned to hear. The fountain pen rolled off the drafting table and hit the floor in the silence like a beam giving way. Somewhere across campus, a hot plate warmed a dinner going cold on a windowsill. Somewhere in a dorm room corner, a trumpet case stood in the dark, keeping its silence. and in one pool of lamplight, in an empty building to which exactly 2 people held keys, the future architect of the Thorne walls, every wall Elias Vance would spend a lifetime learning to unbuild, was, in this moment, being drafted. Marcus's hand found the edge of the table. Whether it was bracing to push away or only bracing, the dark of the drafting room kept that answer.